So I think one of the very first things that we can talk about, kind of getting ready to prepare this etude, is thinking about how we're going to harness our metronome and how we're going to make sure that our breathing is really working for us so that we have plenty of air. I know in my own practice on this etude, the most difficult thing is really the breath support and figuring out how to get the breaths to fit in. So these are some tips that will help with that. First, you should always practice this with a metronome. Always, always, always. Up until maybe a few weeks before, or until you start doing practice run-throughs, practice auditions with your friends and with your teachers. So I've been using quarter note equals 85, which would be the same as eighth note equals 170. The reason I picked that tempo is because I was really struggling to get through the really long grouping of 16th notes from measure 68 through 76 at any slower tempo. But the most important thing for you is that you always pick a tempo that makes you sound your best. So that doesn't have to be as fast if it sounds cleaner and more beautiful when you do it a little slower. Anyway, back to the metronome. So I like to practice this one at quarter note equals 85 instead of eighth note equals 170, because I think hearing a single pulse per bar allows me to think more about the larger phrase and about the musicality. And when I worked with students with their TMEA All-State Etudes in years past, I found that using a larger metronome pulse allows for us to think more musically and also just play a little bit more relaxed. So I'm going to show you the differences in between what it feels like to play it with straight eighth notes on and what it feels like to play it with a quarter note pulse. So here is eighth note equals 170. So aside from my wrong fingering in the middle, I thought I was going to stop and then I kept going. For me, that feels really relentless. Now, if you struggle with subdivision, it might not be a bad idea to practice it with a little bit of that straight eighth note pulse. But this is what it sounds like when I just have the quarter note on. And for me, it allows that music to breathe a little more easily. For me, that makes it a lot easier to feel where the downbeats are and keep the music focused more on what I would say is like the overarching melody instead of all of the little tiny stuff in between. You could even take it one step further and put it on, if I'm doing 85, that would be 42.5. So let me put my metronome on that, 42. Now this is every other bar. I really like that for a couple reasons. One, again, it helps me hear the melody as a bigger idea instead of these little tiny like note by note. The other thing is that if you're someone who struggles with rushing or dragging, using a metronome either on a larger pulse or on an intermittent metronome is really, really helpful for getting a sense of where our tendencies are in terms of rushing or dragging. An intermittent metronome is a metronome that randomly drops out beats, and that can be really helpful for building time. Tonal energy does have an intermittent function. In the metronome, it's that little doll looking thing, and if you click on that, it gives you the option to leave out a percentage of your pulses, and that's a really, really great way to make sure we're maintaining time.